So our first speaker is Marc Nager. He is he's the managing director of the Telluride Venture Accelerator and vice president of innovation at the Telluride Foundation.
Telluride, huh? Do you ski?
Of course.
Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I personally shred the bunny slopes, so.
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, give a big round of applause for Marc.
Thank you guys for having me today. All right, so who here has seen Shark Tank? Okay, let me be the first to break it to you. That's not how the real world works in terms of starting businesses. It's not all about investors and the terms and the deals they make. That's not how it really works. My line of work, we kind of do the real world version of supporting businesses. I get to do that out of Seattle. I've been in Seattle for the last 10 years doing this type of work, made my way down to Colorado in Telluride where we get to support businesses. Now our version of businesses, it's not about creating the next Facebook. It's about creating the next maybe clothing company, bike pedal company, paddleboard company. Perhaps it's a software company. I think they're the type of companies that I hope all of you might think about pursuing one day. Before I get too deep, today I'm going to really tell you about my story. My story is a pretty average story. I was a pretty average kid. You hear a lot of these encouragements to follow your passion coming out of high school. You hear a lot of this encouragement to find a vision. I'll be the first to tell you I had none of those things, and I was always thinking to myself, dang it, I don't have a vision. I don't know what I'm passionate about. Does that mean I'm a failure? Nope. I was able to actually go on, find my way, and I'm going to tell you about 3 moments that really defined my path to get to where I am today. I've been lucky enough over the last about 10, 11 years to travel to 50 countries. I've worked with the White House. I've worked with presidents and senior executives from Fortune 500 companies around the globe. I built a company myself. I was an entrepreneur. We had 75 employees with offices in Mexico City, in Malaysia, in Singapore, and in London, as well as in Seattle. But that's not really what I want to tell you about today. I want to tell you about the things that define my path. 3 specific moments. The first, I'm going to go back to growing up. I grew up in a mountain town, was born in Big Bear, raised in Mammoth in California, in case you know where it is. Similar to some of the mountain communities around here. In Big Bear, my parents were ski bums. They met each other as ski instructors. Neither one of them went to college. They had this big dream for me to go to college, which was great support, great encouragement. But I remember, before I really kind of had a grasp of that, I remember being 10 years old, roughly. And I remember my dad coming home. He had worked for about 10 years in this business, fought tooth and nail. I would have called my dad a workaholic then, absolutely now. My dad worked so hard, and I remember my mom always trying to figure out how to support it. She had a job as well, just to make sure we could pay the bills. I remember my dad coming home one day, and you know when you're a kid you kind of remember things really in exaggerated ways, but I remember my dad just coming in the door with that hunched over. Instantly I knew something was wrong. Now I don't have a lot of memories from when I was 10 years old. This is one that like stuck out. My mom and I both kind of were trying to figure it out. My mom obviously jumped in with all these questions. She's Italian, so she dove right in, really aggressively, caught my dad off guard. What happened? She asked immediately. My dad said, I spent 10 years of my life working for this business. I've invested a lot of our money. It was like 20 grand. That was a lot for my family back then. A lot of our money into this business that he was building. But he was an employee. He was working for somebody else. And the business wasn't going well. The person he was working for ended up buying him out. And he said, I finally got my check. I've been negotiating for the last couple of years. And he held up the check, and it was a check for $1. And my dad, just watching him be crushed. We've all seen our parents in those vulnerable moments, right? And just realizing this was one of those things. And I remember talking or trying to talk to him through the years afterwards, and he repeated one thing. Mark, if you ever have the chance, try to work for yourself one day. Have full control of your future, your destiny, your time. And so that moment really stuck with me, really defined part of my path. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Moved to Mammoth when I was 12 years old. Moving when you're 12 is not easy in high school, right? You guys get that. I played football. I ended up being pretty decent, but I played band, golf, and football. Really interesting. My favorite subject was math. I was kind of a weird kid, super awkward. I kind of went through high school, though, with this incredible experience at school, and I found my tribe of people, my friends at school. When I would come home, my parents went through a pretty messy divorce. And I remember coming home one day when I was 16 years old, dropping my backpack down. We had a 2-story house. It was January, a sunny kind of day, snow outside on the ground. And coming in, and I just heard my mom and my dad yelling upstairs. Walk upstairs. My mom's got an armful of clothes, my dad's clothes. She's throwing them out the balcony over into the snow. And then she comes in. I'm trying to figure out what's happening. I'm 16-year-old trying to figure out what's going on with my parents, right? And then she comes in and she starts hitting my dad. Now, my parents didn't have an abusive relationship at any means, but the moment was that heated. And I remember that moment, stepping in the middle, stopping my parents from a physical fight. And that moment lives with me and will forever. And it was a challenging moment. But maybe perhaps the biggest lesson was realizing my parents weren't the superheroes that I really was hoping or thought they were. They're just normal people. They're amazing people that inspired me and gave me an incredible life. There's a real lesson in understanding we're all just normal people. We're all just on our path. We all have our problems. We all have our challenges. Those challenges oftentimes end up defining us. I know it did for me. I went off to college, knew I ended up having to actually pay most of my own way. Now, my friends called me a hick. When I went off to college in Southern California, I had a belt buckle and drove a Dodge Ram truck. I had to figure out how to pay some of my own bills, so I said, great, I'll deliver futons. Great, because why not show up in Southern California, deliver futons? That's a great way to get the girls when you go to college, right? Turns out it wasn't a good strategy. But I went through college, I ended up paying my own way. I got out of there in 3 years, got out with a business degree. And I remember, again, graduating, being like, great, I'm going to go into the world, I'm going to go do some job interviews, and I'm going to figure out what I want to do. I still had this aching thing in the back of my head that said, work for yourself someday. I went on no less than 20 interviews coming out of college. And I went to all different types of companies. And I remember 1 or 2 jobs I walked away from, I actually got, and I said, no, I could never work in that office. It looked like cages and cells where they kept people for 10 hours a day. I went to some other companies that I fell in love with. I was really encouraged by what they were doing. I saw myself there. I ended up walking away, never getting the opportunity to work at those companies. So I went through this interesting set of events, and I felt like a failure because I didn't have that vision. I didn't have that passion. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't have a path anymore. I ended up finding a company in Seattle through one of my friends, and ended up working with a team that was incredible. I loved computers as well, so I was on the technical services team. There were about 100 people. And I remember after working there for a couple years, the CEO had come in one day. Now, it was a room about this size, about 100 people, called a special meeting. We had all been chatting, as employees of the company for a little while, saying, why are those people in suits coming in and out of the office? And we were kind of catching on. There were lawyers coming in and out of the office for the previous week. The CEO comes in wearing a suit and tie, 3 or 4 lawyers next to him, and he says, I'm sorry. We found out one of our partners has been embezzling from us for the last 18 years, stealing from us. We're going to have to let you all go. Your last day is today. So over 100 of us, this was in 2008, right around the same time as the recession as well. Around 100 of us were out of a job. I was living in Seattle, working with great people. I said, great, this is my opportunity. I'm going to work for myself. So this interesting thing, I went out, I had people that wanted to work with me. I had clients from that previous company. that wanted to pay me to work for them. I had a business degree. I thought I was pretty savvy. Turns out having a business degree didn't teach us anything about actually starting a business. It's like some of those fundamental, I don't know about your guys' high schools, but I didn't learn like how to balance a checkbook back when we had to do that type of thing when I graduated from high school. But some of those practical skills I thought I should have received from a business degree, I didn't actually have. I went to our local SBA office, our local SCORE office, tried to find help, and I ended up stumbling into this thing called Startup Weekend. This idea of, what if you could just create a business in the course of a weekend? And it was with a couple friends that I attended this event, and there were 100 people in the room all sharing ideas about these companies, these random companies, things and ideas that you guys could come up with right now. And we ended up building about 10 businesses that weekend, and the light bulb went off. Oh my gosh, I went to school, I got a business degree, I want to work for myself, but there's never been a clear path. The right path is not to go talk to lawyers, because they're going to charge you a bunch of money and tell you what to do. It's not to go talk to investors, because you're not ready to start your business yet. The right path is to go to your community, go to your peers, go to your friends, talk to them about your ideas, figure out how to turn those into actual companies. The light bulb really went off, and I ended up with a friend purchasing that company, Startup Weekend, and wanting to share that experience and that vision with so many people. We ended up scaling Startup Weekend. It's a series of events that teach you essentially how to start a business. And to date, there have been more than 10,000 events. There's about 1,000 events in about 140 countries around the world. Over 100,000 people every single year go through this experience. And it's just phenomenal when you think about what it really takes to follow your own vision, to find your own passions. And sometimes you have to put yourself out there. And I want to kind of give you that potential thought and reflection as I look back on some of those moments in my life, that the moments that define you, and most of you guys have probably had some of those already, and you will continue to have those, the moments that really define your life are sometimes derived out of incredibly inspiring things. Sometimes they're derived out of pain. Sometimes they're derived out of fear. Think about those moments. Really encourage you to embrace those. They will define you. Be patient. Look for them. Don't stop looking. Don't feel like you're a failure. You're not alone if that is something you do feel. It is that intersection of skills and luck, as one of the other speakers said this morning, and you'll find it. Build your skills. Push yourself, challenge yourself, and you will find it eventually. Don't expect others to define it for you, is perhaps one of the other thoughts to take away as well. My hope for you guys is that one day you're gonna be able to come back here, but you're gonna go off, you're gonna go build those skills, you're gonna encounter those defining moments, and then you're gonna come back here and hopefully be one of those businesses in 10, 15, 20 years presenting at this career expo. Because I think what the opportunity is for you guys to consider this path of entrepreneurship, of starting your own business, of working for yourself potentially one day. And I think that is so important for not only this generation, but for generations to come. It's not going to be the Democrats or the Republicans that solve the problems in our country. It's going to be the entrepreneurs. It's going to be you guys. And I want you guys to think about that. Think about what an entrepreneurial path might look like. Think about how those moments might lead you down that path. I'll be hanging out a little bit later over at the tables. Feel free to come talk to me if you think you might want to go down that path one day. Thanks for having me.